A brand new expression from one of Ireland's most loved independent distilleries. And it's here to stay. Let's drink some whiskey. Welcome to Whiskey and Whiskey. I'm the Whiskey Chaser Brian, and as always, coming to you from Christy's bar in the heart of the sunny southeast Kilkenny city. Emphasis on sunny. Not actually so much sunny, absolutely freezing lately. A little bit more like October, not so much May, and raining. You could probably hear it outside. That's beautiful Irish weather for you. Anyway, on today's Whiskey and Whiskey, a brand that I haven't done before on the show, but one that has a huge following here in Ireland. It's truly loved all over this wonderful little country of ours and has gained a massive following. From the most westerly point in the country, the last distillery before you reach the Atlantic, this is the Dingle Distillery's newest core range product, their Single Malt Irish Whiskey. Ah yes, beautiful Dingle. For those that have visited before, you know you're welcomed with incredible scenery, sleepy towns on the edge of the water, welcoming smiles, friendly handshakes, and a much-loved distillery that locals are incredibly proud of. Located on the Dingle Peninsula in County Kerry, this wonderful little artisan distillery is a powerhouse of distilling might. Winning accolades for their whiskey as well as their gin and vodka expressions, the first true artisan whiskey distillery in Ireland since the formation of Irish distillers in the 1960s. You should be excited. One could say this was a craft distillery, stepping away from the mass-produced and highly marketed whiskies that all we can find on the supermarket shelves these days, but this one puts an emphasis on quality, transparency, uniqueness, and values. A family-run distillery that employs staff from within the local area who are a wealth of knowledge when it comes to distillery and its history. A relatively new history. Kind of more of a work in progress of history. The last 8 or so years-ish. Set up in 2012 by Oliver Hughes, Liam Lahart and Peter Mosley, the same guys behind Porterhouse Brewing Company, which were really pioneers in the Irish craft beer scene here in Ireland. That set up brewing in 1996. It was actually from this love of craft beer that the idea of fully independent craft whiskey distillery came about. And in 2012, the first distillation of their whiskey happened at the Dingle Distillery. The distillery itself is located in Milltown, which is just on the outskirts of Dingle Town and was formerly Fitzgerald's sawmill. It was converted to a distillery and opened in November of 2012 with its first spirit being produced in December of that year. And I got that information from the website in case anybody questions that, because in my research and in true Irish whiskey form, there are a number of different dates in 2013 that claim to be when the distillery first distilled its spirit. So yeah, the website says 2012. I'm going with 2012. Now, the distillery itself is a little different from others in a few ways. The practices I'm about to mention aren't solely unique to Dingle anymore, as there are now over 35 distilleries on the island, but on its startup, it didn't rely on sourced whiskies to make adequate income to be able to survive while its whiskey matured. Instead, it produced award-winning vodka and gin while the whiskey slowly matured in the warehouses. FYI, in Ireland, whiskey has to by law mature for 3 years in wooden casks before it can legally be called whiskey. Just so you know, I feel like I had to say it this time. After all, this is meant to be an informative whiskey channel. There you go. The Dingle Company also introduced something called the Founding Fathers Program. When the distillery was founded, there was 500 casks made available to whiskey enthusiasts, lovers, and investors. If you invested in a cask, you were known as a founding father of Dingle. And you also had the option to mature your whiskey in whatever wood you choose, be it port, sherry, bourbon, Madeira. You get the idea. When the whiskey comes of age and the owners choose, the distillery bottles and labels the whiskey, and the owners can do as they like with it. They've become hugely collectible, rare bottlings that fetch an eye-watering secondary market value if you can get your hands on them. Big if, rare. Now, there was another smaller cask program called the Sons and Daughters of Dingle, which to my knowledge only used smaller blood tub tubes. I think they were about 25 litres for the whiskey instead of the bigger 200 litre plus size casks. A few of them have been released, and yeah, even more rare as rare can be, roughly between 20 to 40 bottles per cask. And you can literally just imagine the frenzy behind a lot of these releases here in Ireland. I mean, 20, 40 bottles of a whiskey out of a cask, it doesn't go very far. Now, whiskeys the distillery produced to date are single malt and pot still whiskies, and in 2017, they were the first independent Irish distillery to release pot still Irish whiskey since the formation of Irish distillers in the 1960s. Up until now, all the whiskeys that have been released from the distillery was all batch produced whiskeys, and when they're gone, they're gone. So to bring out their first ever core range whiskey is something that needs to be applauded and celebrated. This is a rather big occasion for the distillery and fans of the distillery, and super fans of the distillery. Lucky me to have it on Whiskey and Whiskey. You're welcome. Now, on behalf of my research, previous output at the distillery was around 2 casks per day. I'm not entirely sure what the current output is. I didn't have any luck locating that info on that, but I do know that this current release yielded 50,000 bottles that will be sold domestically and internationally, like the UK, China, and eventually the US of A. So everybody over in the stateside, hold tight, it's coming. The distillery itself is aiming to 100,000 bottles of this single malt by 2023, with 500,000 bottles expected across their whole portfolio. And now we arrive at my favorite part of the show, the nosing and therefore drinking of alcoholic spirits. Yes, mate. Generally speaking, at this part of the show, I always ask you to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notifications bell, it's down here somewhere, as well as showing some love with a thumbs up. This research is thirsty work. Subscribe, notifications on, thumbs up, zang. All right, so I have it in the glass, and before I nose it, just a couple of things about the whiskey. Again, a core range single malt expression from Dingle, bottled at 46.3% ABV. This is entirely the distillery's own spirit, using water sourced from its own well located 240 meters below the ground. 61% of this is matured in PX sherry, while the other 39% is matured in bourbon casks, both of which are first fill. This is technically a non-age statement whiskey, but there are whiskeys between 6 and 7 years old in this. RRP of about €55, which puts this in the value for money category in my books. Oh, and every aspect of this whiskey is done by hand and by eye, which include the cuts to the spirit, which are carried out by master distiller Graham Cool. Sounds awesome. Let's drink some whiskey. Actually, before I do drink the whiskey, I just wanted to mention the packaging and labels and tube and cork, everything is really well done on this. So I want to hand it to the distillery on that for their first ever core expression release, the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's have a little nose, we'll have a little drink, I'll give you my thoughts on it at the end. Okay, there's a lot of vibrancy here from the spirit. There's a very light and bright kind of a citrus note. There's plenty of oak there. There's also a bit of pear, obviously single malt. You think pears, you think apples, you think fruits like that. There's vanilla and honey sweetness. It's a little bit on the wild side of things. It's not out there, not totally crazy. It's, you know, tamed to an extent. It's very slight hint of nuttiness. Absolutely, very slight hint of nuttiness, and the more I kind of nose it, the more I'm kind of going through it, the more I get the kind of sweet notes from it. It's funny because I had a little sip of this last week and I didn't get a kind of a youthful note out of it, and now I'm getting a slight bit of youthfulness out of it and like plenty of kind of cinnamon and white pepper spice coming through. Sláinte. Definitely, oh, apples, vanilla, a little bit on the bitter side, and a lot on the spicy side. I'm struggling a little bit to get some really pronounced flavors, but quite punchy. You're getting your oak in there, hints of it. Do you know what I'm gonna do? I don't normally, I'm gonna add a touch of water and open it up a bit. All right, So I added a bare touch of water to it. Opens it up a little bit more. Spices subsided. Now I'm getting a lot more of the vanilla notes, the apple notes. Citrus, even, which is weird, a hint, very, very slight hint of a confectionery note to it. I was going to say florally, but no, it's not. It's definitely confection. Yeah, vibrant. You get a lot more of those apple notes and those pear notes that you would expect from a single malt. Staunch it. Getting the honey, again, vanilla, again, the apple. Spiciness has tapered off quite a bit. In saying that, it's still quite a spicy and mouth-puckering kind of finish to it. Definitely sweet honey, a nice bit of hang time, still there. Slightest bit of tobacco maybe, or kind of like a dark chocolate vibe on the finish to it, maybe kind of very subtly. I think I'm on the fence a little bit with this one. I think the amount of spice coming through for me really hides some of those single malt flavors a little bit. And don't get me wrong, it's a solid whiskey, and I love the brand and their story and their history. I think I need to spend a little bit more time with this one and allow it its fair due. But for the price point and the fact that it's a permanent expression now for the distillery is absolutely brilliant. And before, I just want to say congratulations to everyone in the distillery for this landmark achievement and occasion. Now, if you want to nerd out like I did, a bare touch of water, and I mean a bare touch of water, does open this up a bit. Before adding the water, to me, it does kind of drink like a cask strength whiskey. So anyone who likes that spice element of a cask strength whiskey might enjoy this a bit more. Quite punchy, nothing wrong with that. A touch of youthful elements to it, nothing wrong with that. All right, if you have had the opportunity to try this, let me know what you think of it in the comment section below. And as always, I'll leave all the relevant links to everything below in the description box, along with a link to my Facebook group, Whiskey and Whiskey, which if you haven't checked out, then you probably should, because yeah, whiskey. Also, there is a fan page on Facebook for the Dingle Distillery. I'll link that below in the description as well, so you can check it out for yourselves if you are fans and you happen to miss that. Before I go, I just want to say thanks to the folks here at Christy's for giving me the sample today so I can talk about it with you. As always, the majority of whiskeys I drink on the channel here are available at the bar. And of course, as usual, all thoughts are my own. Lots more new release whiskeys to come in the next few weeks, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel, my Instagram, Facebook. Basically, I'm everywhere. Okay, so until next time, it's been a pleasure. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Whiskey Chaser, out. Sláinte.